Hello, Earthlings. Good morning. Welcome to First Contact Radio. Let's jump into our cosmic weather for today. Alright, space weather is where we're going to start things off. As usual, our solar wind is blowing at 339.2 kilometers per second. Our planetary K index is at a 0, expected to be no higher than a 3 in the next 24 hours. And our storm forecast is down to a 0.101% chance for an M class or an X class flare, so very, very low, and equally as low for any sort of geomagnetic storm activity that may take place down here on planet Earth. Now, one little report here is of a CME that missed. As expected, a CME from last Friday's X flare missed Earth yesterday on the 30th. NOAA forecasters have downgraded the chance of a strong polar geomagnetic storms during the next 24 hours to 1%, as you've just seen. Astrologically, the planets that are in effect are Aquarius, which is our sun sign for the next about 20 some odd days yet, and the moon sign at the present is Taurus. Taurus the bull. Taurus is an earth sign. So we've got the sun sign, which is water, and we have the earth sign, which is, or the moon sign, which is earth. So our conscious is water. Water's emotions, feelings, things of that nature. Earth is physical things, things that we create. So we've got these two energies going on with our subconscious, dealing with the emotions and the feelings and the physical practical things that are in our subconscious mind that we want to create and manifest. And by using our feelings and applying our feelings to the things we want to create, we help to bring them into fruition. So that's some ways how we work with the energies, bringing them together. Now on the moon itself, it's halfway between a new moon and a full moon. So we're at the first quarter. We're at 55% full, as you can see. And last but not least, our dream spell for today. And the dream spell is a blue cosmic night guided by the hand. So the cosmic tone is the 13th tone. There are 13 tones that are part of a wave spell. So today is the last day of a wave spell. Tomorrow is the beginning of another 13-day wave spell. Each wave spell has the theme of whatever is the first one. So since today is the night, the next symbol that precedes this is the seed. So the next 13 days starting tomorrow will be coded according to the idea or the theme of the seed. We're not there yet. Today we're wrapping things up. This is the blue cosmic night. Cosmic jumps, takes all the energy of the last 12 days, gathers it together, figures out what was learned, and then jumps to the next phase. The phrase is, I endure in order to dream, transcending intuition. I seal the input of abundance with the cosmic tone of presence. I am guided by the power of accomplishment. And on the Gregorian calendar it is Tuesday, January 31st, 2012. We're just moving right along here with this year, aren't we? It's already the end of the first month, getting ready to move into the second, and I'm sure as we get closer to December, we're going to be hearing a lot more about what some folks think is going to happen. Alright, now, continuing on, we're going to start things off with our first story of the day about Fox News, that network that is the fair and balanced network, at least so they say. But then again, just because we hear those words coming out of their mouths, does it necessarily mean that it's true, that they are fair and balanced? Well, this is part of a presentation. This is Fox News whistleblowers. And they're going to talk about their time at Fox News, their experience about how that they are supposed to report their news and their stories. So this one definitely ties right in, and I think this is part of a series called Outfoxed. Anyway, let me get to this, play this for you. I think you're going to find this quite interesting indeed if you haven't already seen this. Here we go. Check it out.
Fox Television told us was that we were just the people to be the investigators.
Do any stories you want, ask tough questions, and get answers. So we thought, this is great. This is a dream job. Fantastic. The very first thing they had us do was not to research stories, but to shoot this promo, which was The Investigators.
Uncovering the truth, getting results, protecting you.
And they had a film crew and a smoke machine, and we were silhouetted.
Investigative reporter Steve.
One of the first stories that Jane came up with was the revelation that most of the milk in the state of Florida and throughout much of the country was adulterated with the effects of bovine growth hormone, the artificial hormone that farmers were injecting into their cows so that they would produce more milk.
With Monsanto, I didn't realize how effectively a corporation could work to get something on the marketplace. The levels of coordination they had to have. They had to get university professors into the fold. They had to get experts into the fold. They had to get reporters into the fold. They had to get the public into the fold. And of course the FDA, let's not leave them out. They had to get the federal regulators convinced that this was a fine and safe product to get it onto the marketplace. And they did that. They did that very, very well.
It's a great time to be a high-producing cow. Posilac One Step, bovine somatotropin by Monsanto.
The federal government basically rubber-stamped it before they put it on the marketplace. The longest test they did for human toxicity was 90 days on 30 rats.
Posilac is the single most tested new product in history and is now available to you specifically so you can increase your profit potential.
And then either Monsanto misreported the results to the FDA, or the FDA didn't bother to look in depth at Monsanto's own studies.
The scientists within Health Canada looked very carefully at bovine growth hormone and came to very different conclusions than the Food and Drug Administration in the U.S. did.
Monsanto's engineered growth hormone did not comply with safety requirements. It could be absorbed by the body and therefore did have implications for human health. Mysteriously, that conclusion was deleted from the final published version of their report.
They knew there were problems. They saw serious potential human health problems, and they stood up in Canada and said, we're not going to approve this because we don't believe it's safe.
We have been pressured and coerced to pass drugs of questionable safety, including the RBST. I personally was very concerned that there's a very serious problem of secrecy, conspiracy, and things of that nature, and something needs to be done.
The FDA was then on the hot seat. They had to come up with an answer. They didn't come up with a good one. And they never took the opportunity then. I mean, what would they do? Pull it off the market and say, we need to now do the job that we didn't do the first time? They didn't do that.
We wrote the story. We had it ready a week beforehand. They had bought ads.
Farmers in the milk industry say it's safe, but studies suggest a link to cancer. Don't miss this special report from the investigators.
That Friday night before the Monday this series was to begin, the fax machine spit out a letter from this very high-priced lawyer in New York that Monsanto had hired. It contained a lot of things that were just off-the-wall false, just demonstrably false. But if you didn't know the story and you didn't know how we had gone about producing it, would have scared you as a broadcaster, as a manager.
And they decided that they would pull the story and they would just check it one more time.
But the bottom line was that there was no factual errors in that story. Both sides had been heard from. Both sides had had an opportunity to speak.
1 week later, Monsanto sent the second letter. And this was even more strongly worded. And it said there will be dire consequences for Fox News if the story airs in Florida. And this time they freaked. They were afraid of being sued, and they were also afraid of losing advertising dollars at all of the stations owned by Rupert Murdoch. And he owned more television stations than any other group in America. And that's 22 television stations. That's a lot of advertising dollars for Roundup, aspartame, NutraSweet, and other products.
So we got into a battle. And the first deal was the new general manager.
And his name's Dave. And Dave is a salesman, and, you know, he'd pump your hand. How you doing? How you doing?
Called us upstairs to his office, and he said, what would you say if I killed this piece? What if it never ran? And we said, well, we wouldn't be very happy about that. And he said, well, I could kill it, And we said, yes, of course, you're the manager. You could kill it. It would never air. And he's hemming and he's hawing and he's back and he's forth. And we couldn't figure out, what is this all about? And finally he blurted out, look, would you tell anybody? I said, I'm not going to lie for you. About a week later, calls us back to the office and says, okay, we'd like you to make these changes. In fact, you will make these changes. We said, well, look, let us show you the research that we have that shows that this information you want us to broadcast isn't true. To which he replies, I don't care about that. I said, pardon me? And he said, that's what I have lawyers for. Just write it the way the lawyers want it written. I said, this is news. This is important. This is stuff people need to know. And I'll never forget, he didn't pause a beat, and he said, we just paid $3 billion for these television stations. We'll tell you what the news is. The news is what we say it is. I said, I'm not doing that. And he said, well, if you refuse to present this story the way we think it should be presented, you'll be fired for insubordination. I said, I will go to the Federal Communications Commission and I will report that I was fired from my job by you, the licensee of these public airwaves, because I refused to lie to people on the air. And it's thank you very much. You'll hear from us right away. Well, 24 hours came and went and we didn't hear a thing. And about a week later, he calls us back, and now we've changed strategies. How about if we pay you some money and you just go away? And I said, how much money? Because, when somebody offers to bribe you like that, I always want to know if it might be worth it.
He was going to offer us the rest of our year's salary if we agreed not to talk about what Monsanto had done, to not talk about the Fox corporate response in suppressing the story, and to not talk about the story. Not talk about BGH, again, anywhere. Not take the story to another news organization. Just zip up.
I said, you mean if I want to go to my daughter's PTA meetings and explain what's in the school milk at the school lunch program? I can't. No. You can never speak about this anywhere.
And Steve says, okay, write it up. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Write it up. And I didn't say anything. And Dave, he wrote it up. And he FedExed it to us a couple days later. And he said, are you going to sign? And we said, nah, Dave, we're not going to sign that. And he said, well, send it back, okay? I said, no, Dave, we're not going to send that back.
It was, okay, we can't buy you out. We can't shut you up. Let's get the story on the air in a way that we can all agree it will go on the air. And we started rewriting and editing with their lawyers.
Well, during this 8-month re-review process, I say jokingly, they did things like, for example, they wanted to take out the word cancer. You don't have to identify what the potential problem is, but just say human health implications. Any criticism of Monsanto or its product, they either removed it or minimized it. And it was very, very clear, I would say, almost every edit they made to the piece, that was the aim.
And we changed this and this and this, and then that wasn't good enough. Okay, now change this and this and this. Now change this and this. Version after version after version, 83 times.
83 times is unheard of. It doesn't happen. You shouldn't have to rewrite something 83 times. Obviously, they didn't want to put the thing on the air, and they were trying to drive us crazy and get us to quit or wait until the first window in our contract so that they could fire us.
They, in effect, announced that they were going to fire us for no cause. Well, this was a little much.
And Steve wrote a letter to the lawyer in Atlanta, whose name is Carolyn Forrest, the Fox corporate lawyer.
And I said, this isn't about being fired for no cause. You're firing us because we refused to put on the air something that we knew and demonstrated to be false and misleading. That's what this is about. And because we put up a fight, because we stood up to this big corporation, and we stood up to your editors, and we stood up to your lawyers, and we said to you, look, there ought to be a principle higher than just making money.
And she wrote a letter back and said, you are right. That's exactly what it was. You stood up to us on this story, and that's why we're letting you go.
Jane sued Fox under Florida's whistleblower statute, which protects those who try to prevent others from breaking the law. But her appeal court judges found that falsifying news isn't actually against the law.
Florida's appellate court has ruled in favor of Fox 13. You may recall that Jane Acree, a former reporter here, sued Fox 13 in a whistleblower lawsuit, claiming she was fired for refusing to distort her report. The appeals court today threw that case out, saying Ms. Acree had no whistleblower claim against the station based on news distortion. Fox 13 Vice President and General Manager Bob Linger says the station has been completely vindicated by the ruling.
This is the UFO News with Joshua Poet.
All right, folks, there you have it. Fair and Balanced reporting from Fox News. And from the Fair and Balanced report of Fox News, well, we're going to go to the UFO news here, folks. So here's what we got. Story number one, coming to us from the Examiner. This is Roger Marsh. A 100-foot oval object reported over Longview, North Carolina. A Longview, North Carolina witness reports observing a 100-foot-long oval-shaped object flying over 200 feet that moved over Highway 70, turned, shrank to a black dot, and then disappeared as if it shot forward at an impossible speed. About 11:15 a.m. on January 30th, 2012, according to witness testimony from the MUFON Witness Database. The witness had just turned into a westbound Highway 70 when the object was first noticed and assumed to be an airplane moving just above the high-tension power lines between 150 to 200 feet in the air and traveling left to right. First thought the object was an airplane coming from nearby Hickory Airport, the witness stated. I did wonder why it was so low, and that caught my attention. The witness described the object. It was oblong, oval, maybe 100 feet, and bulged in the middle to maybe 30-40 feet at the center. The sun was behind me and glaring off the craft, and I thought at first that the sun's glare was hiding the wings. The object was whitish in color but seemed to reflect the sun like metal. The object moved over the roadway that the witness was driving on and about 1/4 of a mile ahead. It then turned, and this is when it got interesting. It did not turn the way an airplane turns. It pivoted around its midsection. It got right over the center of the highway, then rotated until it was in line with the road. The witness had a different view of the object now. The object was oval from the side, but as it turned, I could see that it was like a sunburn, and it looked circular from behind. It had no wings at all. I could see this clearly now. The back of the craft was the same white metal color, but the center of the craft was black, featureless circle. The object then seemed to disappear quickly. Craft began traveling upward along the road slowly at first, and all of a sudden it shrank to a black dot and disappeared as it shot forward at an impossible speed. Alright, there aren't any pictures or anything with this one. Well, we have an illustration here, though. As you can see, there's an illustration of what was seen from the different angles. Okay, moving right along from there, we're going to move over to Scott Waring Blogspot. Now this one is pretty kind of funny. UFO watchers, Lego man in space and makes first contact. Amazing photos and a video. Alright, so what we got here is you're going to see this. This is a video. These viewers here. Well, here, let me just tell you. We're watching the Lego Man in Space video, which has over 2 million views to date. I noticed this UFO orb shoots past the Lego Man at high speeds, yet the background stayed the same, which means it's not the moon. The orb is seen at 46 seconds into the video, so you need to pause it and start it many times to view it. Its flight path is from the right side to the left, but also the video see what looks like the moon, which keeps its position. Note, the UFO is only visible at 46 seconds in no other location. Don't mistake the moon for the UFO. This makes us wonder how aliens may view if the Lego Man's first contact was. Okay, so let me go over here. Let's check this out. This is Lego Man. Alright. So you can see what they've done. They've taken and they've attached this to some camera, a balloon. It's flying up there. And at the 46-second mark is what we're going for. Let me pause this as soon as I get there. ahead. Okay, now when it goes by very fast. Just try to see if I can get it right there. Should be right in this area. Okay, let me just do that again. It just goes by so fast. See it? It's all you get to see. Let me bring it back one more time. Comes right here. It's just real quick. It's a real quick dot that just shows up. That's all that there is. Now as we go later in the video you do see, but this is just the moon, so if you happen to be watching, you don't want to confuse this with anything other than what it actually is, which is the moon. And obviously by the speed coming down, you can tell Lego Man is apparently on his way down. Alright, very interesting. That's Lego Man in space and the UFO zipped right by. We have close-up UFO footage over Windsor, Ontario on the 29th. Eyewitness states, I was in my sunroom. I noticed these objects around 6:40 to 10:30 p.m. at night. The objects slowly hover above the city, not following the sidereal path of the stars. These objects flicker and change shape, but amazingly no one takes a look above them in Windsor to notice. No feelings except curiosity. These objects disappear around 10:30 at night, but somehow show up again in the morning. Let's take a look at what this is. Okay. Alright, this was... there's the object right there in question. I'm going to just fast forward through this. Okay, 90% zoom. Well, that's very interesting looking shape, what that is. It's almost like someone hovering there. Okay, and this is a little bit later. Another interesting shape. And it looks like one more or something else. This one's more of a square. It's very fascinating there. We had those three shapes. You got the long one, the triangle, and now the square. Alright, the next one comes for us from Norway. Over Samnager, Norway on the 31st. That's today. Let's see what's going on over there. Alright. Should be, there it is, right in this area here. Can you see that? Now it's just about in the middle of the screen right now. One single white dot. Let me see if we can move close. There we go. A little better view of it. We've all seen these before, these single dots. This was over in Norway, and this is recent, just today. And our last story comes to us here from Hulic, HULIQ.com. UFO sightings part of spiritual universe. Big Bang that Da Vinci explained in 1510. Alright. When a curator at the famed Louvre Museum in Paris announced that he had found 3 sketches by the hands of Leonardo da Vinci on the back of the masters The Virgin and Child with St. Anne, completed by da Vinci around 1510, ufologists had no reason to get excited. That changed recently when a fine art auction gallery in Portland that specialized in old master arts specializes in master art and works on paper, revealed how these and other sketches by Leonardo da Vinci show what appears to be spaceships in the sky over Florence, Italy, where da Vinci lived. At the same time, one new book, 3 Big Bangs, Matter, Energy, Life, and Mind, by Holmes Rolston III, claims to explain the origins of the universe and scientific discovery about the potential presence of an underlying intelligence. also concurs with Da Vinci's writings that claim how Earthlings are part of the spiritual universe that keeps its secrets hidden, but is here now with us, and we are not alone in this universe. Big thinkers think big about life outside Earth. Professor Holmes Rolston III claims there's a massive singularity that's given birth to language and culture, and thus increasing the brain's complexity and promoting the spread of ideas. Ideas generate ideas, which lead life to take on spirit. The nature of matter, energy, genes, and their genesis therefore encourage humans to wonder where they are, who they are, and what they should do. Meanwhile, those ufologists who follow Leonardo da Vinci's teachings, when pointing out da Vinci's view that real knowledge is not just of this earth and that the universe is even spiritual, are now referencing recently unearthed da Vinci sketches from 1510 that reveal out-of-this-world views that can't be easily explained by either science or da Vinci's religious background. Leonardo was, after all, more than just an artist. He was a painter, sculptor, architect, musician, scientist, mathematician, engineer, inventor, anonymist, geologist, cartographer, botanist, writer, and genius. And perhaps, more than any other figure in human history, was a true believer in life outside Earth, based on what his friends and his colleagues called an unquenchable curiosity and feverishly inventive imagination when it comes to the stars, states Louvre Museum's official biography of da Vinci. Well, you can see that there's a lot more to this. I'm going to leave that to you, and we're going to jump ahead to a song. I'll be right back. I got a lot more news and info for you, so stay tuned. I'll be back in about 3 minutes.
What if our government was responsible for some of the greatest crimes against this nation? Would you really want to know? These are big questions, but these questions deserve answers. It's time to demand the truth.
People shouldn't be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of
9/11 was an inside job. Kennedy was killed by the CIA. Jimmy Carter saw a UFO. Answers to secrets you need to know. So wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. The evidence is overwhelming. Step past your fear, take a look. Illuminati lies keep growing, but they're illusion from your eyes. And wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. What would our founding fathers say if they were alive today? Must be turning in their graves. Redcoats are coming, big brother's watching. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. One if by land and two if by sea, and I on the opposite shore will be ready to ride and spread the alarm through every Middlesex village and farm. Whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. When a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Patriots arise. It's time to demand the truth.
All right, let's see what we've got here. First story up. Next story up. Obama eligibility challenges spread to 6 states. This comes from us, then WND.com. An administrative law judge in Georgia could decide as early as this week whether voters in the state convinced him Barack Obama's name should be removed from the 2012 presidential ballot because he is not qualified to hold office. But win, lose, or draw, the fight isn't going to be over, as with other cases are erupting across the nation, with challenges being raised anew, even in Obama's own adopted political network in Illinois. The Georgia hearing was before Judge Michael Malley. While none of the lawyers who appeared at the proceedings was willing to predict what the decision will be, several did confirm Malley had considered simply granting a default victory because Obama and his lawyers expressively stated they would not participate in a hearing to provide evidence that he is qualified to be on the ballot. The default presumably would have meant a recommendation from the judge that Obama's name be stricken from the ballot, a decision which would head for review immediately by Georgia Secretary of State Brian Kemp. He, however, was the one who warned Obama the peril of not participating in the hearing when Obama and his attorney had asked that the event be canceled. Whatever the outcome in Georgia, the issue is gaining traction in other states too, including Alabama, Tennessee, Arizona, New Hampshire, and even Illinois, Obama's home political base. There is a complaint recently filed by Stephen F. Bolton of McCartney Duffy LLP and Gary Creep of the United States Justice Foundation. Their client is asking for a change in state law to allow the vetting of political candidates. Obama isn't even mentioned by name, but I don't think for a minute that the requested change wouldn't include his candidacy. The plaintiff is Sharon Maroney, who has fought inside the system for a way to challenge the candidacies there. In her new case, filed in the Circuit Court of Cook County, she is petitioning for judicial review of the state's election procedures as they exist now. Targeted are the State Board of Electors. Members of the board, several Cook County clerks, and others include candidates Dan Duffy and Amanda Howland. Maroney, a registered voter in the 27th legislative district in the state, said her concern is that only candidates qualified for the office under the Illinois United States Constitution appear on the ballot. The state's primary is in March. The case alleges the candidates did not prove sufficient proof that they are U.S. citizens as required to hold the office being sought as required by the Illinois Constitution of 1970. State officials refused to remove the names from the ballots, so Maroney has gone to court, granting ballot access, she said in the complaint, is contrary to law, against the manifest weight of the evidence, arbitrary and conspicuous, and a denial of the rights of the petitioner. Krepp told the WND the way the system is established in Illinois, it essentially allows political parties to determine who runs for office, and unless voters find out about a filing and can assemble a formal objection within 5 days, their concerns are dismissed. And the system has no procedure for verifying the eligibility of candidates, he said. That particular issue has been the headline for the past 4 years, since before Obama's 2008 election victory, because of the question that remains over his eligibility. The U.S. Constitution demands a natural-born citizen be president, and the founders probably thought to be the offspring of 2 citizen parents when they wrote the term. But Obama's father was never a citizen. There are also those who contend he was not even born in the United States. Krepp said the Illinois procedures make it virtually impossible for candidates to be challenged for the eligibility. He said there likely will be raised in other states concerns similar to those in Illinois, where barriers now in existence bar voters from reasonable investigation of the citizenship of a candidate. Well, you can see there's a lot more, but bottom line, if he's not eligible to be the president, he shouldn't be the president. That's kind of the rules that we have going on here in this country, and unless we change those rules, we should abide by the rules. Natural-born citizen, that means 2 parents born in America, 2 parents American citizens. His father was not an American citizen. End of story. It doesn't go past that. Doesn't even have to get to the birth certificate issue because he isn't a natural-born citizen. All right, moving right along. This is Judge Napolitano talking about Ron Paul and Newt Gingrich being part of the problem. Let's check this out.
And now the candidate whose message of sound money, free markets, personal freedom, and a non-interventionist foreign policy has inspired a generation of rabble-rousing libertarians, of which your host is one, to rage against the machine. He's the only man in the race who Sarah Palin and Rush Limbaugh both have admitted will actually cut the budget and spend less than the government takes in. He's the godfather of the Tea Party movement and a champion of the Constitution. Congressman Paul joins us now. Always a pleasure. I don't know if you heard what Governor Palin just had to say. She welcomes your ideas. She loves what you believe in. She agrees with you on almost all the issues. But she thinks that Newt Gingrich might be a stronger candidate against Barack Obama than you. What do you say about that, Congressman Paul?
Well, you know, I guess everybody has the right to their own opinion, but, you know, if they do some polling nationally with my name up against Obama, I do just about as well as any of them, and I don't think Newt does any better than I do. But the point is are his views really different? I did hear what Governor Palin said, but I don't think he's anti-establishment. I was there when he was in the Congress, and he was as much as part of the problem. I mean, you know, I met him in the 70s, and he was rather bold in saying, I'm a Rockefeller Republican.
Right.
So sometimes sometimes I think that for him to be Tea Party anti-establishment, that is a stretch.
How can you present yourself as the only anti-establishment candidate? I could even say anti-Romney. It's clearly the establishment wants Mitt Romney. The establishment always wants the candidate who will rock the boat the least. How can you present yourself as the candidate who will rock the boat the most, who will present the starkest contrast to Barack Obama, and has a clear message of bringing the government back within the confines of the Constitution?
Well, I think anybody that knows me or knows anything about what I've been saying for 30 years, or anybody looking at the platform, they know that is the case. The problem that we have as strict constitutionalists, we don't get the same coverage. And sometimes when we do get the coverage, they mock it or laugh at it and say, oh, this is too extreme. Of course, we've come to the conclusion that the extremists have been in charge. You know, none of the other candidates want to cut anything. And the leadership of the Republican and Democratic Party have never proposed any cuts. They're only proposing token cuts on proposed increases. So it's the way it's presented, and the people have bought into this and say, oh, it's extreme to cut anything. It's extreme to question the Federal Reserve. It's extreme to not be the policeman of the world. And it goes on and on. So the job of a campaign is to get that message out. And when we do it on one-on-one, see, we were able to get a pretty good message out in Iowa and New Hampshire. And in the last couple of days when we were up in Maine, believe me, there's a lot of enthusiasm.
Right.
But at a national level, it's a real challenge. We don't get quite the same coverage as the others do because they all represent the status quo.
There once, I think, were about 9 or 10 of you. I remember Tim Pawlenty and of course, Michelle Bachmann and Rick Perry. And John Huntsman. It's now down to 4 of you. Would it be better if you sort of did better than Rick Santorum and sort of knocked him out of the race, so it's just you as the only conservative and the only small government person taking on the establishment and taking on Newt Gingrich at the same time?
Well, I feel like I'm the only one now, but you're right. The votes might pick up. You know, when Rick Perry, who was supposed to be a good conservative Texan, when he dropped out, we picked up votes. Actually, percentages went up when Kane dropped out, too, because he had a little bit more legitimacy about being a Tea Party because he had not been in government. And, you know, his arguments were a little bit more credible. So our percentages, that's when they took a nice little jump. You know, it went from the single digits up to the high double digits after he dropped out. So that would be the case. But I've been, even when there were 8 other candidates, I always said they all represented the status quo because they're not talking anything about what I'm talking about, you know, with a strict interpretation of the Constitution. That's what they don't want to live up to because, and the reason they don't want to talk about it because it's a little bit embarrassing to them. You know, they take the oath, but then you say, oh, you mean you're not supposed to go to war without a declaration? I didn't know about it. You mean it's still in the Constitution that you're supposed to have gold backing to the currency?
Yes.
You know, this kind of thing. They don't want to have the embarrassment of that, but that's well entrenched in Washington, so that's why you don't hear our views expressed on national TV as often.
Congressman Paul, it's a pleasure. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you, Judge.
You just...
All right. So, politics, crazy business. Now, they were just talking about Newt Gingrich and Herman Cain. Former Fed boss Herman Cain delivers Tea Party flock to Newt Gingrich. Citizen Cain, of course, is eminently popular among Tea Party conservatives. He was once the Republican frontrunner, and his announcement last night could make the election in Florida more competitive, writes Daniel Dougherty for townhall.com. Even though Mitt Romney is a shoo-in as the hand-picked insider nominee who will run against his ideological cousin Barry Obama, the establishment plans to keep the sideshow running in order to give at least the illusion of the tussle between candidates is democracy in action. That's really rich. What's really rich, though, is a claim that Citizen Cain is immensely popular among the Tea Party conservatives, who in fact are little more than a domesticated cheering section for the Republican Party and its platform of big government, wealth confiscation at gunpoint, and mass murder in small, far-off countries. Favre seemed to remember that the original Tea Party was libertarian and stood adamantly opposed against not only a bloated and spendthrift federal government and forever war agenda, but the Federal Reserve System as well. So that kind of is the joke. I mean, the Tea Party, some of the things that are attributed to the Tea Party are rebellions against, like, the 9/11 Commission report. They threw it over the bridge in Boston. They were showing that this thing was just a piece of garbage and nonsense, and that was part of the Tea Party's rebellious movements in the past. And then Ron Paul continued on with the Tea Party movement and the Fed. And here you've got Herman Cain, who used to work for the Fed. Now, isn't that the joke? You got a guy here who has worked for the Fed, this guy right here, and now he's supposedly giving votes to this guy here, and neither one of them have any of the principles of the true Tea Party in mind. So it's funny how the whole thing works, and people are scammed into believing certain things, all because the mainstream media, Fox, is so fair and balanced that they make sure that you know all of the truths, right? They just lie over and over. But you know what they expect? They figure that anyone who watches Fox News is not going to go fact-check them. That's why they are so bold about their comments. Go fact-check some of the things Fox News says. I guarantee you every day you can fact-check what they said and you will find inconsistencies. Every single day. Make that challenge. Try it for yourself and you'll be amazed at what you find. Now, this is from RT, and this is about how Ron Paul is actually being treated. So let's listen to what they have to say. This is a very insightful piece as well.
Nearly 20 debates, a couple of sex scandals, and more than half of the candidates dropping out. Tomorrow is the primary election in Florida. And on the sidelines of Mitt versus Newt boxing match over morals, money, and conservative values, well, there's another battle. Those who are concerned about Ron Paul. You may be wondering why, given that he hasn't yet won a primary and is polling in a distant fourth place in Florida. Well, Ron Paul's supporters are not only loyal, many of them are in a target demographic group. They're young. Take a look at some of these numbers out of New Hampshire. When you look at voters between 19 and 29 years old, Ron Paul in New Hampshire got nearly half the vote, 46%. Apparently, the situation was similar in Iowa. Ron Paul got 48% of the young vote there. This is just one of many factors involved in this pot of ingredients we call the fight to become the GOP nominee. So I want to talk about what we can call the Ron Paul effect with Julie Borowski, a Ron Paul supporter. Julie, let's talk about these numbers of the young vote, first of all. You know, Ron Paul is the oldest candidate here. Why is it that his message resonates with so many young people?
Yeah, it is kind of strange to see a 76-year-old man, very conservative, very religious, get so much support from young people. And I think one of the reasons is because Ron Paul tells it like it is. He doesn't sugarcoat things. He has a consistent record. He is going to do what he says. In his plan to restore America, he wants to cut $1 trillion in the first year alone. He's talking about big ideas, and the other candidates are not.
So you think that's something that resonates with young people. it's interesting because there seems to be a feeling of being threatened by Ron Paul and some of the supporters also. So this is what happens in presidential primaries. You know, votes for one candidate means that those votes don't go to other candidates. But some conservatives say they've had enough. And I don't know if you've seen this, Julie, but these conservatives have launched a petition to try to steer support away from Ron Paul. I want to put it up on the screen. Included in this petition, quote, "The time has come for true conservatives to rise up and take a stand." They also call those who support Ron Paul, quote, "radical leftists." And it says, "The real conservatives of the Republican Party hereby demand that Ron Paul end his presidential campaign at once and exit the GOP along with his radical cult followers and supporters." Now, I don't know about you, Julie, but a lot of the Ron Paul supporters that I've come into contact with, this sort of like threatening language. They've also threatened to get in the way of Ron Paul's son, Senator Rand Paul, next time he's campaigning, if he doesn't get out and if he launches, you know, a third-party campaign. You and your friends that support Ron Paul, I mean, does this kind of threatening language work?
No, what's going on right now is there's an ugly fight between establishment Republicans and true conservatives. Ron Paul is a threat to the establishment. He's dangerous to the status quo. And they don't want to have a debate on foreign policy. So what they're doing is they're trying to marginalize Ron Paul and his supporters, calling us racist, anti-Semitic, calling us leftists, basically name-calling with no facts to back it up.
Yeah, there's a lot of name-calling and finger-pointing and, you know, sort of warnings that if you vote for Ron Paul, you're taking away votes from other people. There is another side of this. There is another side of those who, you know, wouldn't be sad to see Ron Paul go, but they don't want to offend people like yourself and other Ron Paul supporters. I want to play a little bit about what the former CEO of GE, Jack Welch, said about Ron Paul supporters.
Ron Paul is going to exit left on this stage sometime down the road before August or in August, and the GOP doesn't want to lose those wonderful voters that he's brought on board. So how well they treat Ron Paul going forward is a very big deal.
All right, so here you have this approach. Be nice to the supporters. Treat them well. He goes on to say, you know, it should be in the same way that you treat somebody that you're firing. Make sure they leave with dignity. What do you think about that approach?
Well, I'm a little more optimistic about Ron Paul's chances, but I know a lot of people who say if the GOP doesn't nominate Ron Paul, don't count on our votes. We might even go third party. And the GOP for years has been trying to get the youth vote. How can we get the young people? How come the Democrats get the young people? Finally, young people are flocking to the Republican Party and we're being marginalized. We're being called a bunch of names. And that strategy is probably the dumbest thing I can think of.
Especially since certainly President Obama in 2008 got a lot of the young vote. A lot of people came out in support for him. And I know that's something that Ron Paul has said in the past, you know, I'm the only candidate that's actually going to bring the young people out to vote. But what about this notion, Julie, that young people don't often show up? I mean, will this be the case if Ron Paul doesn't make it much further? Will they just not show up?
I think if Ron Paul is still in there, they will show up. The thing about Ron Paul supporters is they're the most passionate. No matter what, rain, storm, snow, blizzard, we're going to show up at the polls.
How do you know that? I mean, it's very, you know, optimistic to say that, but what have you experienced in your time that really has shown you that Ron Paul supporters are here to stay?
Because if you look at New Hampshire and Iowa, 50% of young people almost showed up for Ron Paul. And I know so many Ron Paul supporters who are going to the polls, and they never voted before, and they're voting for Ron Paul this time.
What happens after Florida? Nobody really expects Ron Paul to do very well in Florida. Have you heard anything in terms of what's next?
Well, I don't think the Ron Paul campaign is focusing that much on Florida because it's delegate, the winner takes all delegates. But I know he has a good chance in other states such as Nevada, which is very libertarian leaning.
All right. Julie Borowski, a Ron Paul supporter. Thanks so much for coming in today and sharing your views.
All right. I, for one, will support Ron Paul as far as he goes. And if he's not part of the GOP at the end, then I will go where he goes. I will not vote for any of the other candidates because basically they're all idiots. They are just the same thing, the same problem. I will not vote for them. And I feel pretty certain that most other Ron Paul supporters that I know feel exactly the same way. We're not going to vote for someone who wants to keep the Fed going or wants to go fight unconstitutional wars. That's the whole thing. It's not that Ron Paul has an idea and we're jumping on a bandwagon. He's talking about real important values. And once a person gets those values in their mind, they stick with the values. They don't flip-flop. You know, people aren't politicians that are flip-flopping back and forth because some corporation is paying them money to do so. People get on a value and they believe in a value. We want this country to grow and be a good country. Newt Gingrich, Santorum, and Romney are not those guys. They're only going to make it worse and keep the agenda in place that's going now. Something needs to change, and that's why Ron Paul is feared by them, because he will bring the change that they don't want to have happen. But too bad. Change needs to happen. This is the time. Don't rule the people out. All right. A couple more stories here. Nanoparticle evidence shows Fukushima might be part of a depopulation agenda. This comes to us from the Intel Hub. Evidence from Fukushima Daiichi disaster yields results that show a natural weaponization of nanoparticles related to the encodant, signifying the potential for a previously planned event. A report from PNAS entitled Uranol Peroxide Enhanced Nuclear Fuel Corrosion in Seawater reads, the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear accident brought together compromised irradiated fuel and large amounts of seawater in a high radiation field. Based on newly acquired thermochemical data for a series of uranol peroxide compounds containing charge balancing alkali cautions, here we show the nanoscale cage clusters containing as many as 60 uranol ions bonded through peroxide and hydroxide bridges are likely to form in solution or as precipitates under such conditions. These species will enhance the corrosion of the damaged fuel, and being thermodynamically stable and kinetically persistent in the absence of peroxide, they can potentially transport uranium over long distances. This suggests that the uranium nanoparticles have been engineered by design or thought out to traverse long distances and affect certain parts of the body effectively due to the contained application of seawater into the reactions of the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant in Japan. Well, I'm going to let you read this. There's a good video here as well that accompanies it. It's 11 minutes long. Check that out. Here we have Twitter. Says they plan to censor tweets country by country. Now, this is not something we want to be hearing about. Twitter out there doing this kind of stuff. Twitter has announced a new plan that they will allow to censor users' tweets on a country-by-country basis if governments object to them. It says the policy is an attempt to keep doing business in countries such as China that do not welcome all expression. On the company's blog, Twitter says it will now withhold offending content within specific country that censors the language while leaving it unaltered for the rest of the world. It will also post a censorship notice whenever a tweet is removed. Until now, the only way we could take account of these countries' limits was to remove content globally. Starting today, we give ourselves the ability to reactively withhold content from users in a specific country while keeping it available in the rest of the world, the company said. Very interesting. Now they're going to start deciding per country basis what people should know and what they shouldn't. How far is this going to go? We'll see. Pay attention, folks. Pay attention. Here we go. Presidential Commission directed energy weapons used on American citizens in tests. Listen to an exclusive podcast that accompanies the article. In the dawn of 2012, many Americans still left in the dark and unawakened to the fact that their own omnipotent government and floundering leaders in Washington would have anything less than the people's best interest at hearts will now face one of the biggest fears. Factions within the U.S. government's military-industrial complex have been, and indeed are testing, directed energy weapons along with chemical, nuclear, and biological agents on the civilian populace. In fact, U.S. law approved by Congress allows chemical and biological testing on the populace. The Presidential Commission for the Study of Bioethical Issues is composed of 13 members and was established in November of 2009 by way of executive order, which was issued by President Barack H. Obama, otherwise known as Barry Soetoro, According to the official government website, the Presidential Commission for the Study of Bioethical Issues advises the President on bioethical issues that may emerge from advance in biomedicine and related areas of science and technology. The Commission works with the goal of identifying and promoting policies and practices that ensure scientific research, health care delivery, and technology innovation that are conducted in an ethically responsible manner. The documentation provided by the website concludes that the Commission has engaged in various studies over time, one of which was the December 15th study entitled Moral Science Protecting Participants in Human Subject Research. Well, this goes on and on and on. But here again we have another situation where the President signed an order that people can be tested with these different weapons. He's a great guy, that President. Not an American citizen. He's not natural born. He shouldn't be in the office of presidency, but many people have been fooled. How do you like him now? How do you feel that you've been fooled? Are you still in denial that you've been fooled? Or are you out there waving the banner for your own sense of, for your own lack of ability to accept your fate, your flaws, and realize that you made a mistake? You need to realize you made a mistake and come correct, folks. It's the only way we're going to solve the situation, because there's a man in the office who is a fraud. And many of you are supporting this fraud. Now, how would you feel if this fraud was one of your kids? Would you be supporting them? Would you be supporting any frauds around you, friends, family members? Absolutely not. Because most people out there are good people, and you don't support that kind of activity. But the man in the office is a fraud, and you're buying into him, and you're believing the lies. I want to know, I really want to know, when the people in this country and around the world are actually going to wake up to the lies. Is it so hard to believe? Are you so emotionally screwed up by the lies that have been told to you that you don't know that you can handle the truth? I believe that you can. So have some courage and look at the truths that are out there, folks. Look at the truths, because the lies have been put in your face so long, and they're lying to you more and more every day. And the only one who's going to get hurt by this is you. So you need to wake up and realize that you're being lied to every single day by a government who doesn't care anything about you. All right. Our last bit of information today comes to us from Dutch Sense. And recently there was an earthquake yesterday, early today, in the Chicago area. Not only was it an earthquake, but it also was accompanied by a nuclear incident within the same 24-hour period of time. Let's check this out, see what you think.
Dutch Sense here. It is 8:30 a.m. Central Time on January 31st, 2012, Tuesday. And there was a 2.4 that occurred just northwest of Chicago, guys. Now, I don't know where to go with this other than I put out this video yesterday with the nuclear power plant having a unknown problem and basically venting radioactive material onto downtown Chicago. Now, that's also just northwest of Chicago. Now you put those two together and you get an earthquake and a nuclear problem in the same area in the same 24-hour period. And that to me is really, really strange. Now, also, I put out a bulletin a day ago. Let me just go ahead and show you here. Again, a day ago, I said Midwest possible earthquake threat. Watch possible movement in Arkansas, Missouri, Tennessee, Illinois, Kentucky, possibly Indiana and Ohio. Just a gut feeling on this. Not going to make a video as I have nothing to back up my thoughts other than the lack of an earthquake in Missouri, in the Missouri area since June. And the rest of the world has moved since then, so it must move at some point. And here we go. Earthquake in Illinois. Earthquake near the nuclear power plant. So just to give you an idea, okay, let's actually go look this up. Let's go look up the epicenter and find out what is close by the earthquake epicenter. Okay, so here's the nuclear plant, here's Chicago. Now I'm going to pause it up. I'm going to go pull the coordinates for the earthquake from the USGS. 1 second. Okay, here we go. 2.4 magnitude, Illinois. Let's go ahead and pull these coordinates and look up and see how close this actually is. All right. Okay, so it was in the north suburbs of Chicago, and again, that distance is, let's just go ahead and get that, 50 miles. So within a 50-mile radius, you have a nuclear power plant problem, venting steam, you have an earthquake. Put those two together, guys. I'm telling you. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go search the earthquake nuclear power plant connection. Very strange.
All right, that brings us to the end of our stories for today. If you're in the Chicago area, pay attention to what's going on out there. All right, last but not least, let's go to our meditation for today. All right, let's imagine that we are walking along a path. We like walking along the path because we walk along a path every day. And as we are on our journey, making our way along the path of life, we see others out there. And notice as you're walking along, notice how there are those who are walking in a state of sleepwalking. And there are some who are walking wide awake. And as you are going through and walking along and you see those who are sleepwalking, walk over and tap them on the shoulder. And notice how they blink to attention slowly. They wake up. And once they wake up, the color around them changes. The gray cloud that was over them dissipates, and they fill with color. And as you continue to go through the crowd, walking along the path and tapping others on the shoulders, little by little, everyone is waking up. And you see others waking others up. And as everyone is waking up, you notice that up ahead of the pack, that the leaders are about to walk over a cliff. And as you get to the edge of the cliff, you notice that there are a few that walk right over, a few that are still asleep. But as those that are awake get to the edge of the cliff, they stop. They realize that they are being led over a cliff to their death, and they go another direction. And as they do, you notice the faces on the leaders scowl and get angry because that's not what they want. They don't want people walking on their own accord. They want people walking over the cliff. But by being awake, you know different. You know better. By being awake, you avoid the dangers. You understand the lies. And you see clearly the truths. So imagine the greatest truth of all, love, shining from our heart as a green all around the world. And let's just send love to everybody around the planet. Let's imagine that everybody's getting a dose of love, and that love is going in to heal and to make whole and to open their eyes. And let's just think a good thought for everybody in the world today. Wish everybody good vibes. And with that, let's bring our energy and attention back to the present moment on the count of 3. 3, coming back to the present moment filled with confidence. 2 coming back to the present moment filled with faith, and 1 coming back to the present moment happy, healthy, and whole. Happy, healthy, and whole. And there you have it. That brings us again to another show ending. The end of a prayer meditation. Thanks for being here, my friends. It's always great to be here sharing this stories with you. I'll be back tomorrow with more news and information. Till then, be safe. I'll talk to you soon. Peace. I'm out of here.